All right, what I'm getting ready to do is kind of glaze over a video. This is an interview between Sam Harris and Alex O'Connor. Just to kind of before I get started, talk about my background with Sam Harris. I love the guy. I find that I get a lot of my modern ideas and how to think from him. I kind of just wanted to, so to speak, poison my own perspective. Jumping to a conclusion right away. The self is an illusion. To me, just like I said, jumping to a conclusion seems like it's once again pointless semantics, but we'll see. I think if you followed me or read my shit, that you are yourself. Yourself is not an illusion. You are having an experience. The self can become diluted. Again, the self can become diluted. Its experience can become illusory. I would agree with those statements. But to say the self is an illusion is once again the dog chasing its tail, pointless, spinning in circles. But the reason I wanted to go over this video was Sam Harris I look up to. In my opinion, I would agree with or disagree with this video on the outset. To you, I'm experiencing this video for the first time. And hopefully this kind of more or less slam dunks the point that, if I'm not mistaken, Sam Harris still holds the belief that all your conscious experience is whatever holds your attention in the current moment. And I think that's exactly right. The problem is man's continued inability to frame the conclusions afterwards appropriately. So we keep either reflexively, continuously looking inwards, which I would define as narcissism, or we keep continuously dishonestly looking towards the sciences with dishonest questions, such as why consciousness with the hard problem of free will. But with that being said, like I said, I look up to this guy. I think I disagree with what he's trying to claim at the outset. And let's see what we find out.
It's fascinating. I'm paying attention as the words are coming out of your mouth to how they are just sort of emerging,
blah, blah,
right?
Boo, boo.
And it's weird to think that, in a way, as far as my experience is concerned,
just checking to see if it's recording.
Everything that I know of you and am hearing of you and am experiencing of you is just appearing in my brain.
Yeah.
There's just this. I open my eyes and there's just this image, and I open my ears and there are just these words, and there's a sense in.
He's talking about his sensation of a cognitive experience at a subjective level. He's trying to do his best to describe what he's experiencing, what he's doing as a result.
Which, when I'm speaking right now, I'm not calculating every word that's coming out of my mouth. I'm not, thinking about every sentence.
You don't need to have an experience.
These words.
You do a lot of things unconsciously to have an experience. Heartbeat, for instance.
Where the hell are they coming from? They are just going. I didn't.
Limbic system, neurosynapses. We know where you are in terms of reality, right? We know where you aren't. You're not in Japan, presumably, if you're listening to me. But you're not in this room. You're somewhere else watching this through a screen. He is over there in a blue suit somewhere.
No, I was about to say
in time.
Word going. It just came out, right? And
you have no idea how you said it. And when you fail to say it, if you forget it for a moment and you struggle to find a word, or you say the wrong word, that too is mysterious. Your success is mysterious, and your failure is mysterious.
But it makes it so fascinating to think that my own words coming out of my mouth seem no more connected to this thing I'm calling me than the words that are coming out of your mouth, right? And I don't know if that's what people are talking about when they do.
It seems to me that this experience that I'm having is no more connected to what I'm talking about.
Describe the so-called ego death, or the one with everything.
He seems to be a little bit all over the place, in my opinion, now talking about ego death, but let's keep going.
Attitude that people have with spiritual experiences, if it's got something to do with this sense of realizing that. In other words, I've always pictured it as when someone says, there's no difference between me and everyone else in the world. I've always imagined the kind of experience they're having is something like them implanting themselves in everybody else and taking this self and sort of extending it to be the world, whereas maybe it sort of goes in the other direction.
Yeah, it does. I mean, so have you ever taken psychedelics of
I have, yeah.
Okay, so I just need to shut up and let him talk, apparently. But I think we're trying to talk about the same thing. He's trying to talk about the experience he's having.
Yeah.
What have you taken, and what was that like?
2CB, mushrooms, LSD once, and never enough to have some crazy experiences, but nothing to the extent of ego death.
Right.
As in, I've never had an experience where I've come out thinking, oh, that's what it means that's what the death of the ego is. I've come out thinking, that's what this means. I can understand why people talk in this way or that way, and just perhaps the most transformative experiences of my entire life. But I've never experienced an ego death.
Right. Yeah. So the way I would add the psychedelic experience to this map is that, and the reason why it can be incredibly useful but also misleading, is that with psychedelics, I mean, the one thing that's very important about them is that in all but the rarest cases,
Help. I'm sorry, but where did that come from? Anyway. Interviewer has never experienced ego death. Try it sometime. It's great.
they're guaranteed to do something. Right?
Oh, yeah.
If you take the requisite dose, you're going to have a change in your experience. So it's not going to be no one comes away from 300 micrograms of LSD saying, well, nothing happened, right? I mean, there are actually some people who, for whatever reason, are just neurologically impervious to certain psychedelics. But in the general case, you're just not going to be bored. You're not. I mean, it could be terrifying, but something's going to happen, and it's going to happen right on schedule, right? And you can't say the same thing about meditation or yoga or fasting or any other discipline that someone's going to engage so as to perturb their consciousness. And that's why psychedelics have been so useful for people as a gateway to meditation or the contemplative life in some way, because it's the thing that proved to them that it was possible to have a very different experience of the world, assuming they had a positive experience on psychedelics. What's misleading about it is it gives you the sense that spiritual...
So that whole minute, body needs physical shock from outside world to gain different perspective. This was in the form of mushrooms. Cool.
Expansion and progress is a matter of changing the contents of consciousness. It's a matter of having more mind and more esoteric states of mind, and to see brighter colors and to see different things with your eyes closed, right? Like now my eyes are closed, I don't see much of anything, but on mushrooms, wow, it was like an Aztec empire, and it was just I felt like I was could psychically travel to different places, and it's like that must be where spiritual progress lies. What's misleading about that is that we know that any experience you have, any qualitative change in the contents of consciousness is by definition temporary, right? I mean, first you don't have it, and then you have it, and then you don't have it, right? Because that's the nature of any experience. It's like, drinking a cup of tea or a cup of coffee or whatever. It doesn't matter how big the cup is. Eventually you drink it, and then you no longer have that tea or coffee. So sort of impermanence rules, right? And so you can't, so a transitory...
Perfect description of experience. A perfect outlining of where experience is and how it operates. We're not describing experience completely, but we're outlining it. Very good.
Spiritual experience can't be the real bedrock that is the basis of the deepest possible well-being, if such a thing is discoverable. The other thing is it's misleading with respect to the sense that it gives you a sense that freedom, real psychological freedom and transformation is elsewhere, right? There's ordinary consciousness where you feel like this sort of conventional sense of self in a physical world that's not self, and you're disposed to do things like check your email, or you're not how you can drive a car, you're not stoned, and yet there's all kinds of things denied you in this sense. There's all kinds of things you can't notice.
Mm-hmm.
And then you drop acid or you take MDMA or whatever it is, and you have this sea change in the contents of consciousness, and all of that seems, assuming you're having good changes and not, you're not pitched into psychosis, which is also available. It seems like that progress is just getting, is a matter of getting better.
People need to understand something about psychosis, and although it's fundamentally defined as an observer, or you, if say you're having psychosis or going through it, you're divorced from reality in so many words, but that you're still having an experience. The constraints of the experience are just wacky, wavy,
Are more expansive, more love-drenched, more, insightful, more meaning-drenched thoughts and emotions and intuitions. What meditation does is show you, and again, meditation can mean many things, but is what I mean by meditation, and what people should mean by meditation. It unhooks you. It's essentially orthogonal to that whole regime of changes changes in the contents of consciousness, and it allows you to recognize something about consciousness itself that is present, whatever the contents. Right? I mean, it could be the full explosiveness of changes of the peak of a psychedelic trip, or it could just be the most boring, ordinary mind that just it's just you looking at a cup on a table and nothing else, right? There are things you can notice about consciousness that cause the sense of self, the sense of subject-object separation, to drop out, right? And so you can be so ordinary, just staring at a cup consciousness can be free of self, and extraordinary, there's just an ocean of color and energy and bliss, can be free of self. And that freedom, in some sense, equalizes those two states, right? It's not to say that there's not, that oceans of color.
Observer, attention, experience.
And bliss have a lot going for them. I mean, it's fun, but it's great when they appear, and it's fine when they disappear, right? Then nothing really is lost if you can find this thing that is what I would call non-duality. It's also, it could be called selflessness. It could be called emptiness. I mean, there are various framings in Buddhism and elsewhere, but it's different than the expectation you just described of getting more mind, right? Like of suddenly getting you're expanded beyond yourself into the rest of the stuff that until a moment ago seemed like it was not self, right? So now it's not just me in this skin suit. I'm over there. I was looking through your eyes too, and I'm out there with the people and the animals who are not me. But now all of a sudden, it's just one big mind. I would imagine there's actually experiences that can seem that way. I don't, whether they're veridical or not is certainly debatable. But I think you can have that sense that you of unity with a larger totality. But that's not the crucial insight that is selflessness by in the meditative space. It's a much more ordinary and simple recognition that if you pay close enough attention, like just in hearing any sound, like you hear the sound of traffic or whatever it is, the default mode is to feel like you're the one hearing. There's a hearer, and then there's a thing heard, and there's just this subject-object kind of divide that's getting bridged with this operation of hearing. But real concentration, or better yet, a real analysis of this sense of being a subject in the first place, can suddenly collapse that to what is clearly a more basic condition of just hearing, Like there's just this pure perception of hearing prior to the concept of self and thing heard. And there's freedom in that. I mean, there really is as you begin to rest in that more and more and recognize
I guess we're doing this from now on.
its implications psychologically, it does become the antidote to all kinds of ordinary psychological suffering that you other
I
all
need
kinds
to
of
hear
knots in
that
yourself
again.
that you otherwise
Sorry.
are
I know I'm
trying to
going
figure out
back on my own
how to
recording. I don't
You're
care to
just
edit.
thinking the expectation you just described of getting more mind, right? Like of suddenly getting you're expanded beyond yourself into the rest of the stuff that until a moment ago seemed like it was not self, right? So now it's not just me in this skin suit.
Having
I'm
a new
over there,
experience.
I was looking through your eyes too, and I'm out there with the people and the animals who are not me.
Describing
but
a
now all of
new
sudden,
experience.
it's just one big mind. I would imagine there's actually experiences that can seem that way. I don't, whether they're veridical or not is certainly debatable. But I think you can have that sense that you of unity with a larger totality. But that's not the crucial insight that is selflessness by in the meditative space. It's a much more ordinary and simple recognition that if you pay close enough attention, like just in hearing any sound, like you hear
Pee Wee Herman, he said the magic word.
Or the sound of traffic or whatever it is. The default mode is to feel like you're the one hearing. There's a hearer, and there's a thing heard, and there's just this subject object kind of divide that's getting bridged with this operation of hearing. But real concentration, or better yet, a real analysis of this sense of being a subject in the first place, can suddenly collapse that to what is clearly a more basic condition of just hearing. Like there's just this pure perception of hearing prior to the concept of self and thing heard, and there's freedom in that. I mean, there really is as you begin to rest in that more and more and recognize its implications psychologically, it does become the antidote to all kinds of ordinary psychological suffering that you all kinds of knots in yourself that you otherwise are trying to figure out how to untie. You're thinking, well, why do I feel this way? How can I feel better? How can I be happier? Why am I so disappointed and regretful and anxious, etc.? The more you can fall back into this recognition that there's no center to this experience, it suddenly gives you a direct experience of equanimity in the midst of other, even classically unpleasant experiences, right? So you can be feeling significant physical pain, or you can be feeling nausea, or you can feel something that is. I'm not saying there's no reason to act on bad perceptions. I mean, you might have to go to the hospital, but the question is, how unhappy do you have to be at every step along the way as you're riding to the hospital, or dealing with the uncertainty of what the diagnosis is, or whatever. Like there's this adventure that happens at the level of concepts and at the level of changes, which you can keep punctuating with a recognition of selflessness, and each recognition does actually reset you to a place of real tranquility in the midst of it, and it's a tranquility that is not dependent on any changes. It's not dependent on the next good thing happening. It's not dependent on the bad thing that's present going away. It really is. It really does, in a very paradoxical way, tend to equalize experience. And how this, I mean, I don't want to bring us back to the moral landscape, but it is somewhat, confusing how this
man's unlimited power to reinsert himself into anything. Incestuous nature, incestuous relationship with itself is unlimited.
might relate to everything I've said about the moral landscape, because everything I say about the moral landscape suggests that there really are stark differences between experiences. It really matters that your hand not be on a hot stove. There may be more to the story given the requisite ways of being in touch with what it is like to just be, in each moment, rather than become in the next moment through thought and and concepts.
So there's no you, there's just the sounds, the sights, the thoughts that emerge.
How have we still drawn the
I
wrong
guess
conclusions?
It's just experience.
He's gotten everything. It is just experience. Hold on.
Right. So the conventional sense is you're having an experience, right? There's you, the subject, the ego, the
Yeah.
self. And it's important to specify what that is for most people, because it's not, I'm not saying that people are illusions. I'm not saying that you don't have a body. I'm saying, but people don't feel identical to their bodies. They feel like they're subjects that have bodies. I mean, they feel like passengers in their bodies for the most part. You feel like you're in a relationship to your body. When your body malfunctions, when you have a pain that you don't want,
You are. You are. He's correct.
or you have some symptom of something that some possible disease that worries you, you are a, you're a prisoner of the body, but you're an inner subject. You're a kind of homunculus with respect to your presumed sense of what you are, from the first person side. Now we know that makes no sense neurologically, right? I mean, you're either the whole body, or your whole central nervous system, if you want to demarcate it in some way, or you're just the part of your central nervous system that is conscious, right? Wherever consciousness stops in the body, well, then that's the boundary of what you are. But most people feel like they're a subject, very likely in
Repeating himself. I would really need to, this is never going to happen because I'm never going to meet the guy, but I need to sit out and hash out with him, what he means by that, because it sounds like he is trying to say this is where the consciousness is located, such as, for instance, we know you, or this, as he believes to be the illusion of the self, is not here. It's not in your hand. I can cut off my hand. I feel like I've give ad nauseum examples at this point, but you're not here. You're not in your chest. You're not completely in your head. You see what I'm saying? And you see what he's getting at? Is that he's still on this, to me, on this side of people who think that this is some mysterious, funky experience. And then that lies within this self is an illusion argument line, and how he's kind of brought it back to the moral landscape. I'm not saying there aren't morals involved in some of this. But we really need to pin him down on what he's meaning by some of this, and I can't unless you talk to him. I don't know why is it such a logical jump to say that you, as he is saying, are clearly affected by physical aspects of what you are made of. You are also clearly affected by internal perceived aspects, such as what, psychology has attempted to give us. But for some reason, it seems like he's rather conflationary on what the conclusions, or what he thinks the conclusions are. Again, I don't know why it is such a jump to say if we know what we're made of, and we know what affects our creation internally and externally, how can we ultimately not say we are this experience? We are exactly what our attention is on. And that's kind of, I feel like, what he's been saying. We are exactly what our attention has been on the whole time. Now you have to realize this is an observer-based conclusion. Experience is always relatively based. The closer you get to our sun and the solar system, I believe time slows down. These are relatively based experiences. Sometimes those experiences can become funky to the observer, the person having them, such as psychosis, such as them spaghettifying through a black hole. I'm using extreme examples, but use whatever example, internally or externally, you would like.
In their head that is, in some sense, unchanging, right? Like it's not that you notice changes, but you're noticing those changes from the point of view of being this subject that's not reducible to those changes, right? Like you feel like I was tired a moment ago, but now I'm not tired. But then you notice the change. There's the fatigue, and now that fatigue is gone, but the subject seems somehow untouched by those changes. But the subject does seem therefore not identical to experience, right? Like you're having the experience.
We don't understand where we are, we, us, you, in relationship to the questions that we're asking.
You're enduring the experience. You're riding around in the middle of the experience. And that's the false point of view that's undercut through meditation.
But of course, when a thought arises in your head, that thought's not arising in my head, right? There's this first person center of consciousness to which that thought is happening. That's you and not me. If the self is an illusion, if the self doesn't exist, if there is no center there, then what is the thing that a thought like that can happen to that makes it such that you can have the thought but I can't have your thought?
Yeah, well, so that's why I said that people aren't illusions in the same way. I mean, I guess there's some perspective by which...
How about the fact that we're just having different experiences?
You could say that people are illusions, but not for these purposes. It's not mysterious, from my point of view, it's not mysterious that I'm thinking my thoughts and not thinking your thoughts, right? Because my thoughts, the only place for my thoughts to appear is where they are appearing in this system, this organism that is me, and you've got your own organism over there, which is you, and you. So the fact that you have your memories and I have my memories is no more mysterious than saying, I just wrote something on my palm, and it's on my palm and not on your palm, right? It's like it's just a physically instantiated thing about this system that is. It's like the pain in my knee is felt in my knee because it's a pain, and there's only one knee in the universe that feels that is giving rise to this particular pain.
Bing.
And there's only one brain in the universe that is susceptible to those inputs.
Bing.
And so it is with my memories, and so it is with anything else that I might think. But the I part of it, the sense that it's me and mine.
Where's the separation?
Point of view of a subject.
Why the discontinuity?
That's when it becomes impersonal. That's when it becomes, because consciousness really is just the fact that anything is appearing at all. So in some sense, consciousness for me is the same as...
Consciousness for me is the fact that anything is appearing at all. You're having an experience. Consciousness for me is just being able to observe an experience. But again, I wish I could just ask him.
Is for you whatever you're conscious of, because consciousness is just the condition in which there is a qualitative character to anything.
I would almost agree with that unanimously. I wish I could just sit down with him.
Right. So I just I view consciousness ultimately as deeply impersonal and in some sense transcendent. I mean, it's transcendent of the feeling of being a locus of consciousness in the head, right? You can get rid of that feeling. You can inspect that feeling such that it disappears. And what you have is a totality of appearances that includes all of your experience. It's not like your experience suddenly changes radically, but there's no center to it. You're not on the edge of it. You're not separate from it. There's just it, right? And that there's a freedom in that because it's
perfect.
You're no longer
nailing it.
The sense of self is a kind of contraction. It's a perpetual mode of reacting to experience. So
it's a function of the inputs around it. Period. QED. Let's go. finish it, send it over.
It is born of this perpetual, I like this, I don't like that, I like this, I don't like that, more, less, and you're constantly gripping the deliverances of your five senses and your mind, right? You're feeling, you're cognitively, you're trying to figure things out. You feel doubt. Doubt is a kind of emotion, right? And and I would argue it's a negatively valenced one. Uncertainty is like that, and you're constantly working in every channel in which you're available, and all of it implies a center, and that's the feeling of being a subject. When you look for that center and fail to find it, all of your capacities are still available to you. You can still
fail to find it. You found it. You just keep rewording it. It's called experience.
And smell and think, but it's not. It's like the difference between having an open hand versus having a clenched fist. I mean, you can sort of clench your fist enough. If this is the only way you've ever had a hand, well, you might even think there's something in the middle of it, right? You might think there's a structure here, but it's an implied structure. Like if you just open your hand, you realize there was nothing in there, however it felt, and nothing else need change. It's just that there's a source of confusion and discomfort that is no longer there, and then it remains to be seen just how good it is for alleviating other psychological problems or sources of suffering, or what is it good for is an open question as you live your life with this capacity. But not having the capacity and then being in doubt about it is just a blocker for exploring it, right? You just then can't, it's like being in doubt as to whether or not, it's possible to, whatever it is, get in shape, because like the gym hasn't been invented, no one's ever figured out that just arbitrarily lifting heavy objects will change your body, and the first time someone does it and describes it, it seems totally pointless. I mean, you mean to say that with all the things you could be doing in life, you're just going over there and picking up heavy objects and putting them down to the point of discomfort, and sometimes getting injured, and you're saying this is actually good, and if you couldn't see the changes in people's bodies, if you couldn't put a photo of Arnold Schwarzenegger on the wall of the gym to show that something radically different is possible, well, then everyone would be we'd be 200 years into this project and still be talking.
Sometimes your experience needs to be shown the possibilities of what is actually obtainable within nature.
Talking about our doubts about whether or not there's a there, right? And it's just a inconvenient fact that certain changes are not visually easy to see, and that's just a problem.
Well, I think I'm no longer a meditation skeptic, at least to the degree that I think I'll be giving it a proper go. I mean, I
get it. You need to interview other people for your fucking YouTube channel.
When I say I've never meditated, I'll have closed my eyes and thought, as you've put it before, where people have encouraged me to meditate and I've sort of gone along with it. But I think a conversation like this is something like the equivalent of putting that picture on the wall of the gym, where you begin to sort of paint a picture of what things can look like to a brain that...
I'm going to show you how well I can requote you.
Reflects on these things deeply.
Well, I'll add one more piece.
Let's keep stroking each other's incestuous natures around our own hubris. Yes.
For you, which is it's kind of a logical handhold that I think.
Yeah, let's hold each other's hands while we do it. While we're at it.
Even if you were in doubt about. So the claim I'm making is that the feeling of self.
I ain't never talking to this guy.
Is vulnerable to inspection, right? If you look closely enough at it, you'll see that consciousness is a prior fact about you that doesn't actually conform to this feeling of I or me, right? Or subjectivity. And there's one way you can see that logically, which is if feeling like I or me feels like something.
I really feel like we're digging into the weeds of semantics, so I don't know what he meant there.
That itself must be an appearance in consciousness. I mean, that there's something you're noticing about your experience that feels that way, right? And there's in the same way that you're noticing my voice as an object, it's just an appearance.
I really think all of these emergent thoughts that they're talking about and how they're just, and Sam would agree that all you are is being affected by what you're being affected by in the current moment and responding and yada yada. I really think the whole interjection of each other's hubris is something to do with what he's saying here.
The fact that you're outside my voice, being able to notice it, proves that you're not reducible to it.
Yes.
Right? And so it is with sensations in your body. Like the pain in your knee is not you because you're over here noticing it down there.
Yeah.
Right? If this feeling of self feels like anything, if there's any signature energetically, if it's on your face or in your chest or somewhere where you might intuit it, there's this prior condition of just the light by which it's being seen. So what's that feel like? Right. And so that's anyway, that's just a concept, but that's a pointer into why it would make sense that this would be available.
Thinking about the big questions in life can take a heavy toll on our mental health. I've certainly...
Sorry you guys had to hear that slam. It's when you kind of think about the nature of videos like this, just try to remind you there's a reason. There's a different reason. There's usually an alternative agenda as to why people are asking these questions. Ultimately, I'm just trying to give you yourself. Stop dancing around these words. I think it's weird that they've done that for so long. But I think we figured out who we are for a long time. We just keep trying to input our own perspective for some reason. Like, I get that we're all having our own subjective experience, but hopefully this helps you understand you're not any more special than anyone else, no matter what side of the coin you are at this point, in terms of if you think yourself is an illusion or not. Hey, that's it.